Yesterday, we launched an appeal for $43 million to support our response in both countries. This amount is increasing by the day, and we expect WHO's financial needs for this emergency to double by the end of this week. We urge donors to be generous. The search and rescue phase is now coming to an end, but for WHO, the task of saving lives is only just beginning.
Well, for the latest on this, joining me now from Geneva is Jens Laerke, the spokesperson for the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Jens, great to have you on with us. I'd like to hear about the UN efforts on the ground, both in Turkey and Syria. What are aid teams seeing, and how are they responding to the situation?
Well, first of all, aid teams are there in both countries. They are seeing devastation, they are seeing destruction, they're seeing trauma, they're seeing orphan children, they're seeing literally all the things that we as an international community need to step in and help heal. As you just mentioned, we have a flash appeal out now where we ask the international community for support for Syria, $400 million. In about an hour or a bit more, I'm being told we will launch a similar flash appeal for the response inside Turkey, so that we have appeals for both of these countries. It's very important that the international community steps up, fund these appeals, so that we can continue the life-saving work that's already going on.
What are the main challenges that the UN is seeing on the ground in responding to this disaster?
I think it's obvious for everyone who looks at your pictures that a main challenge is simply the physical destruction of the disaster zone is its totality. It has been flattened. Buildings have been pancaked. Roads have been broken up. Tens of thousands of people are homeless. So just getting into that, where everything that you and I would take for granted in an everyday life, school, a place to work, a bed to sleep in, is simply gone. So that is the first challenge. We start from scratch in many of those places. Now, of course, in a place like Turkey, there has been a tremendous outpour of response, both, of course, from the national authorities. We are seeing the same in Syria. So what is needed right now, as you correctly mentioned, where the search and rescue mission is kind of ebbing out now, we still see these miracle rescues, by the way. So I don't think anybody's going to give up before there's absolutely zero hope left. And we have had almost 200 teams going into Turkey, for example. But after that, there is the very long period of getting people back out of the tents where they are living now, or some are even sleeping in the open, giving them the life-saving supplies that they need here and now, and then a bit further down the line, help with the reconstruction. From the humanitarian side, our focus is, really laser sharp on this immediate life-saving response. That's why the flash appeals that we have already for Syria and now, which is coming out for Turkey, has a 3-month window. That's a critical time where we need to continue. And as Dr. Tedros just said there in your clip, now is when our work really starts.
So what kind of potentially humanitarian situation are we looking at long term, with so many people displaced, so many buildings, homes destroyed, schools closed as well? What could be the long-term consequences that we might expect to see?
I think part of humanitarian relief is to avoid the worst effects of this in the long term. For example, and I think you have mentioned it yourself, children, for example, are traumatized by this. It's very important that they early on get some psychological help, that they have safe space to play and just be children, as your reporter said. If they don't have that now and get a sense of normality, that can have a devastating traumatic effect on them for the rest of their lives. So that is very important. It's important that they get back to learning. It's very important that people who have medical problems get back to a situation where they can go to a hospital, meet a doctor, get a prescription, get the medicine that they need, so that their health is not endangered in the long run. So all these kind of things needs to happen now. I think it's too early for me or for anyone, frankly, to give a full picture of what are going to be the long-term consequences of that. For sure, we know it will have after effects, also way beyond the time where we have the aftershocks.
And what is the UN doing in terms of the risks for a secondary disaster? This is something we've been talking about for several days now, because we know with so many people displaced, no homes to go to, there's issues with sanitation, perhaps clean drinking water. Of course, it's also very cold in the region. I know in Syria, cholera is also a concern, but what is the UN What is the UN teams on the ground? What are they doing to try to prevent these secondary disasters from becoming a real issue?
I think what they are doing is they're doing what they're experts in. For example, you mentioned the cholera outbreak we have in northwest Syria. That's already an established fact. We need to make sure that that is contained. One key element of that is ensuring a clean source of drinking water. Now, for that, you need to have clean water. You need to have the water supply up and running. So we have teams that specializes in that, from water engineers to water trucking to making sure distribution of bottled water is taking place. There are experts who deal with provision of food. We have seen that we have distribution centers where people can go and get a hot meal. That needs to continue as well. As you mentioned, it's very cold. It is freezing cold. I was there in the area just a few days ago, and it is truly cold. And people need blankets. They need warm clothes. They need fuel for heating. So emergency response like this is identifying very precisely, specifically, what is needed for people's health, what is needed for their shelter, what is needed for their protection, what is needed for children's education, and then mobilizing the organizations and the systems who can provide that and get them on the road and into the disaster zone.
All right, we'll leave it there. Jens Laerke joining us from Geneva. He is the spokesperson for the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Thank you so much.
Thank you.